Anne's going to be doing a little bit of videography here while we're doing this, and the idea is that we're going to each week put our demonstration on our YouTube channel, and then as you are working on your projects, you will be able to look at the instructions, and maybe it'll be fun. I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous about it. She's making me nervous just with that camera over there. So, quilters, how many of you have actually quilted before?
We don't have to have completed one, right?
Oh,
Just
not completed.
Oh,
I put together a few squares.
all right. Well, I think what we'll start talking about first this evening is some of the things that I think are very helpful in quilting, what items I like to have the most when I'm working on a quilt, and we'll talk about supplies as far as, what we've got here, and then we'll do a little bit of demonstrating. And tonight's block is going to be the 9-patch block, which you can see little 9 patches. I brought a whole little group of them here to show you. So we've got just a whole bunch of little 9 patches, which are a fun, easy block. We can't get any easier than this. Okay. So, what kind of tools do we need for quilting?
Scissors.
Scissors.
Or rotary cutter.
Rotary cutter. There you go.
Rotary. I'm sorry. I was sewing and I've lost my mind there for a second.
Rotary cutter. I mean, this is it. This is the best little instrument they've ever come up with for cutting your fabric. So, rotary cutter, rotary mat, because of course you don't want to cut across your dining room table with one of these. So a mat, and then rulers. And by using these things, you can do such accurate cutting, and you can end up with, not lots of leftover stuff in between. When I finished up on this one, I literally had just a little handful of scraps that was left over. I just used the fabric. Okay, so we've got mat, ruler, cutter, sewing machine, that's good. Yeah. Let's see what else. Yeah, you can do it by hand. I don't want to.
I was going to say, it'd take forever.
It would take forever. Good scissors. So I always keep, I always have fabric scissors and I have paper scissors separate. Little fabric markers are kind of helpful at times, but those aren't a must. Pins. So I like to have good pins. When I am doing quilting, I like to have a pin that has a really good size head on it. I don't want just a little whatever. I like to be able to see it and be able to get it out of my way and that kind of thing. Thread. When I am actually working on a quilt, I'm not worried about colors of thread. I use a neutral color through the whole thing. It's all on the back. It's all on the inside. You're not going to see it. So don't be changing thread all the time. Just get a neutral color and work through it. As far as quilt books, one of my favorite books is this Quilts, and More Quilts. I think I like this book so much because they really get down into some good details, and they've got tons of quilts and fabulous pictures, and you want to make them all. Okay? And then we get down to fabric. So let's talk about fabric a little bit. What kind of fabric is best to use for quilts? Any ideas? Cotton.
A little higher quality is nice.
Yeah, a little higher quality. Although if it's your first quilt, you might not want high quality. But yes, a little higher quality. I wouldn't really. Well, these days Walmart doesn't have fabric anymore, anyhow. So, but I usually buy my fabric at quilt shop. A little more expensive, but a nicer fabric, and you'll end up with a nicer item. So how do you choose fabrics? I mean, here we're looking at, every block is different. A sampler quilt, that's what these are, sampler quilts. So we're not just repeating the same block over and over and over. So how do you come up with the fabric to choose for your quilt? Any ideas?
Usually pick one that I really like and then build off from there.
I think that is just the easiest way right there.
Yeah.
Pick one piece that you really love. And I'll tell you what I did on this one. I picked this piece right here. And it has so many colors, and I mean, look what I ended up with. So I picked this piece, bought a fair amount of that, and then just bought lots of other ones to go with it. Now, with this one, I went about it in a totally different way. And yet it's a great quilt. I love it. But what this was, you go in a fabric store or in a quilt store, and they have a little pack of coordinated fabrics. That's what this was.
Oh.
It was a little pack of 8 coordinated fabrics, and I put 2 or 3 others with it, and this is what we have.
Yeah, but somebody else got something they really, really liked and then put them together.
Well, I
right?
think it was probably a series that some company put out.
Yeah.
They have.
And then she found the stuff.
Yeah, I went and
between
bought
them.
this
Yeah.
after I
Afterwards.
put my blocks together.
Yeah.
Okay. Other things you can think about is maybe having like one color theme. You might like blue as your color, and have lots of different blues in a piece, and then maybe have one contrast color in it to kind of make a few things pop out. So those are some of the things that I think about when I'm buying my fabrics. And when I go in the fabric store, they probably, I don't know if they love me or they hate me. They should love me because I always spend a lot of money. But they probably don't like the fact that I get everything out from all over the shelves and I lay it across their tables and I have fabric going everywhere. But it's fun.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that would make a great social event for our group. It would be a lot of fun. Has everyone in this group used a rotary cutter before? Okay, we have a few people that haven't.
Yeah, I'm
So-
wanting to know if I can even do a project without having to invest in all that.
You can.
Yeah.
And I have
You
a
can.
whole drawer of odds and ends fabric.
You
that I can dump
absolutely
on
can. And
that,
you can still do everything in here without it.
It's just
It might
quicker
be a
with
little
it.
harder.
Well, you have to cut it with scissors instead of the cutter, and you'll have to measure out the
I'm
pieces.
kicking myself because the other day I would volunteer at Neighbor to Neighbor.
And they had one.
And no, one of those cutting board things. Though.
Mm. Mm.
You can snag it.
Is it still there? You could
Oh
check.
no, I'm sure it's gone. The price is so ridiculous.
Yeah, because everybody knows what they.
That's it.
Yeah.
I have chicken.
Yeah.
I could
And if
maybe
there's
loan
some
one
of you
for
that
these
don't
others.
have any of this stuff, and you want to try them,
Yeah. We'll
talk
bring
to us
some
because
more.
we'll share
Yeah.
in our group and let you try things. Because I don't want you to run out and buy a whole bunch of expensive items without knowing if you would actually
Yes.
use them. But I want to give you a little demonstration then for those who have not used the cutting mat and the ruler and the rotary cutter. One of the things that I like to do, well, that you really need to do, is you have to have a straight edge to work from. So how do you get a straight edge? And these are fairly straight. I need to find one that doesn't have a straight edge on it. If I have any of those. Okay, here's one that's been cut up and whatever. So we want to get a straight edge on this. So what I will do is fold the piece of fabric in half, and here you've got an edge that you can lay on a line. There's a grid on here. So you've got that straight edge that you can lay right on a line, and then your grid goes the other way. So you take a ruler and you just find one of those cross grids and line your ruler up on that. And cut right down there, and you've got your straight edge on your fabric. And then what's nice is when I tell you, okay, you need a piece that's 2 inches wide, you can take your ruler and, oh, there's the 2-inch mark, and you can put it right on the edge of the fabric, and over here's your 2 inches, and you just go right down there and cut again. It makes it very accurate. It makes for much less waste of fabric. And what happens is if you have really accurate cutting, then you're going to end up with really more accurate blocks that everything fits together.
Corners meet better.
The corners meet better.
Yeah.
That's exactly
how you get them all
true.
lined up there.
That's how
That's how you get a path that's straight.
a path that's straight, or how when you look at a star and you've got points and it ends at the points. It has to do with accurate cutting, and it has to do accurate cutting and pressing. I know some teachers will say, you don't have to press in between. That's no big deal. If you want it to look good, you do. And the other thing is that you have to have an accurate seam allowance. Do you guys know what a seam allowance is?
Consistent, too. Not just
Consistent.
accurate, but consistent.
Has to be the same through the whole piece. Do you know what a seam allowance is for quilting? Because if you're making dresses, it's what, 5/8?
Yep. Well,
If you're doing a quilt, it's a 1/4 of an inch.
So whatever guide you have on your machine,
You
you follow
need,
that
yes.
forever.
If you need to, some of the older machines don't even have guides on them. I've worked with a lot of people that don't have any guide on their machine. Measure what it is and put a piece of masking tape across there so that you can always follow that.
There's also
And have a
this
straight
neat
line.
little tape that comes in rolls
Yes.
that you can just put on your fabric and just...
And it's a 1/4 inch, yeah, there is. I think there's little guides that you can actually hook onto your foot on your machine too that, it's exactly a 1/4 inch. Now, I've got a real cheater machine. I'm able to push a button that says 1/4 inch.
Yeah, I have to use the tape.
And I love that.
It works.
But the big thing is be really consistent. Make sure that your seam allowances are the same through your whole piece. Because if you've got a 1/4 inch here and a 1/2 inch over here, nothing's going to meet up anywhere. Okay? All right, let's talk a little bit about, I guess I would call it the anatomy of a quilt. Okay? First of all, does everyone know what the difference is between patchwork and between applique? Tell me. You don't know. Okay. Anybody?
Applique is where you take a shape and you actually applique it on your
You
block.
lay it on another
like your
piece.
heart over there.
The heart is a perfect
Applique.
example of applique. Also, on this church, now that church there is pieced. I'm going to just tell you, that was not easy. It was
We're not doing
So, when it came to this one,
Easier.
I appliqued the little windows and, the little elements onto the church. So applique is putting a layer of fabric on another layer. Okay. Patchwork is actually taking pieces and sewing them together to make a design. So that's two kinds. All right, so we've got blocks then. Do you know what this is called? Sachet. So we've got blocks, we've got sachet,
Yeah, that would have been.
sachet here, border,
Okay.
and then a quilt comes in layers. Okay, so we've got our top here, and the reason these are not further done is I wanted you to be able to actually look at the backs of these tonight while we're here. And then hopefully next week, one of the two will be actually quilted before we have class. That's kind of what we're hoping for. I'm not going to make a promise, but we're hoping for that. Okay? So, layers. We've got our top. The middle layer is batting. And then the underside is your backing. Backing can be done a lot of different ways. I'm kind of known for taking all my leftovers, if I have any, and making them into one big piece that I throw on the back of my clothes. A sheet can be used. That's an easy way to have a big piece, because if you just have 45-inch, 40-inch fabric width, often you'll have to piece it together. They do now sell muslin and a few other pieces in wide widths, so that you can actually buy a piece of fabric that is big enough to be the whole back of your clothes. And then once you get those layers together, and you've quilted them either by hand or by machine, or tied them off, whatever you choose to do, then you put a binding around the edge. And that's what closes in all your layers of your quilt. Okay? So, tonight we're going to do the little nine patch. Okay? So, a nine patch, I mean, you look at that, and that's this right here. Nine patch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Really fancy name for a block. So as you look at that, you think, well, you could just cut little squares and put all those little squares together, and you'll have your nine patch. And that's true, you can do that.
There must be an easier way.
But there's an easier way.
That was scaring me.
There's an easier way, okay?
And the chances of all those lining up is so slim.
No, that's not true.
All those little tiny squares,
That's
and you had
not
your little tiny
true.
One by one.
Okay.
Yes, if you cut them out one by one, that's true.
You get
But
skill
we're going to
level.
do some tricks, and that's part of this class, to find the easy way to make it coming out. So I'm going to take this down now, and we're going to just do a few things here. All right, so if you take your hand out and turn to that second page in there, the first page is actually the lesson plan. The first thing I want to tell you is, I already found our first typo error, and let's fix it right now. Okay? If you look at the measurements here, it's got for a 9-inch block, which are these, and it's got for a 12-inch block, which are that size over here, okay? And it says for the 9-inch block, you want a strip that's 2 by 12 inches. And for the 12-inch block, you want one 2.5 by what? It can't be smaller than for the 9-inch block, by the way. That's supposed to be 15 inches, not 10 inches, okay? So there's our first boo-boo we did.
Good, because I would have just cut them 10.
Yeah, I know.
I wouldn't see.
I looked at it and
If
I
you're
said,
only doing one, you probably don't even look at the other one.
I looked at it and I said, what? We did something wrong, because if it's going to be a bigger block, it needs to be a bigger strip. All right, so rather than cutting out 9 little squares, here's what we're going to do. And we're going to do this with the size that's for the 9-inch block tonight. What you're going to cut out, let's get some of this out of the way. What you're going to cut out is one strip. It's 2 inches by 12 inches. And then you are going to cut out 4 2-inch squares. Okay, so this is going to be the 5 block part. Here's a block. 5 of this design, but 4 of that one. Okay, so this is what you're going to cut for this block. One strip that's 2 by 12 and 4 2-inch squares. Doesn't really look much like a 9-patch block, does it?
Not yet.
Not yet. So what are we going to do to it?
Work magic.
Yes, we are. You're exactly right. We're going to work magic if I can find my pieces. So what we're going to do, we're going to take 3 of these and we're going to lay them right sides together, fairly close on this. In fact, when I do it, I put them right up against each other. Okay? Because there's 3 rows in the block. So we're going to put 3 of them on there, and we're going to stitch right down that side, the 1/4 of an inch, right down there. Okay? And you take your scissors, and you're going to go right in there and clip those apart. So what you'll get now by clipping those apart, I got to move around so Rayanne can see this too, I think. You're going to have 3 pieces like that, and you're going to have this left over that was on the bottom, okay, and you've still got 1 square left over. And we need 3 rows. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to put this right there. Okay? We're going to bring this here. We're going to put these here and here and sew down your 1/4 of an inch. So when I do that, now what I do is called chain piecing, where I go right from one piece to another piece. So here we are with all 3 of them. This one and then the next 2. And it's all one piece. Do you have any questions so far? Is it going to work?
Well, I couldn't see you when you did it. Can you
Oh.
do it and stand on the other side?
Yep. Let's go through it again. So
You had the 3.
here we are with the 3 pieces, right? Okay. And we've got our little,
Uh-huh.
so we're going to put that on here.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to take these and flip them
Oh,
over
okay.
here.
And then
you're
sew
gonna-
them over.
And then you're
Okay.
going to sew down the 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
So this is what you get.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So everybody with me? All right. So now we're going to, this one that's right here like this. Again, take the scissors, snip that little thread, cut right here, cut right here. So what are you going to end up with now?
Do you usually just cut with scissors when you do that? Or
I
just-
do.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got 3 of these. So we open them up. So this is the top one here, where we added the green on this side. And so now we've got 3 strips. Now, here's where I want to talk about pressing. Because your pressing is what's going to make your difference for you. This is what's going to help it lay right when you sew it together. So what I generally do, this isn't going to be every single time it's going to be this way, but most of the time it's going to be this way. I will press towards the darker color. So here on this one, it's in towards the middle. On these, it's out toward the outside.
And the seam allowance isn't spread open.
We
It's
don't
flat.
open the seam, and that's a good question right
That's what I
there.
learned when I was doing.
When we do dressmaking, you press the seams open. With quilting, we do not press the seams open, and here's the reason. First of all, they're little tiny seams. To press them open is a pain in the neck.
And it
But-
stretches them.
But the second thing is, when you press those open and then you put batting in between, the batting can actually seep through. So then you have little stringy things of backing sticking through your seams.
Seams coming out between the stitches.
Yeah, not pretty. Okay? So we press them to the side. Okay?
Really? Just
Yes.
why towards the dark color? Why not always go towards the light?
So that you don't see
So
the
it doesn't
seams
show through it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
like
it
if you
doesn't
had a
show through.
white and you had
Yeah.
black, you know, you'd see that black.
Yeah.
Right. Now, there are going to be once in a while sometimes where you will be pressing towards a lighter color just because you're trying to reduce bulk in the seams. But the general rule is press towards the dark. All right, so now we've actually got 3 rows for a block. But that's not the right arrangement. That doesn't look like a 9-patch block there. So here we are, we're going to rearrange it.
It does.
And there you've got your 9-patch block. So now all you have to do is flip that little thing down. And here is what you need to see. And actually I'm going to pass this around and let you see how the seams actually butt up to each other. And it's almost self-pinning itself for you. But so that you know it's going to stay there, stick a pin there at the seams. But pass that around and just feel how, when you put those together, it really lays flat and it really makes a nice feel. So you'll stitch across one row and then you'll stitch across the other row. And then you have, right then you have your 9-patch block. Okay? Now in the small quilt, we made 4 of these to make a bigger block. In this one, our 9 patches are across the bottom, a whole row of them. And I just used 2 colors for the whole thing. So I really wanted it to look like a path. But it took 8 blocks for that one. But what the directions then are telling you here, what I have you cut, that's for 1 9-patch block. So if you need 4, you'll cut it 4 times. Okay? If you need 8, you'll cut it 8 times. And excuse me, please notice too that when I did this one right here, I did 2 separate, or 3 or 4, I don't remember. What I did was I used different ones in each, each block is different, 4 different blocks. But I still tried to keep some continuity with one color the same, going this direction, and one color the same here. So it's trying to tie it together. So there's some continuity there in those blocks. And in these, like I said, I just used 2 colors for the whole pathway. And these are some that I made first when I was just starting to play with my fabric. I had thought about doing a row where every one of them was a different color. But then when I laid that out on my board here and looked at it, I thought that doesn't look like a path. Everything is wild and disarrayed, which might be my path. But I don't think it's the path that we've been talking about tonight. Okay? So now we need to talk about fabric amounts, how much you would need if you're going to make one of these quilts. Before we do that, do you guys have questions on this one block that we're doing this week? My suggestion is if you've never done this before, go home and just take scraps of fabric and play with it. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just try it out. But these are some really good techniques, and that's what I'm trying to show you in this class is, the fastest ways, and yet let them be accurate and fun. And I guess if you can be efficient and quick with it, and you actually feel like you got something done, because we tend to start a project and it becomes overwhelming and then it sits, which I'm very good at that too. All right, so do we have any questions at this point about this block? No? Okay. Then let's talk about fabric amounts. For the large quilt, I bought a 1/2 yard of 8 to 10 different fabrics. And then I bought 1 yard of the one that is my sashing around the outside. That's my pink, which I used it in a lot of blocks and then the sashing. And I bought
Was it 1 yard?
1 yard. And then for the border, 2 yards. Okay. On the small one, on this right here, what I did was I bought a packet that had 8 fat quarters in it. Does everyone know what a fat quarter means?
They always look so pretty in the store.
They do.
And I never know what to do with them.
Right here. This is what you do with them. Okay, if you buy a half a yard of fabric, okay, 1 yard is what, 36 inches. So a half a yard is 18 inches. So a quarter of a yard is 9 inches. But 9 inches isn't, I mean, that's a pretty small piece of fabric. And sometimes you need something that's a bigger piece for certain things that you're working on. So they do what they call a fat quarter. It's still a quarter of a yard, but it's cut differently. What they do is they cut a half a yard of fabric, and then they cut that down the middle. So it's a quarter of a yard, but cut so that it's a big square kind of thing instead of just a narrow strip. Okay. So this is a packet of fat quarters. It had 8 in it, and I added 2 other little pieces because I wanted 3 greens in my trees. And their packet only had 1 green. So I just added some scraps of green. And then I bought 1 yard for my sashing and border. Okay.
Do you know the size of each of these?
This one is 36-inch square. We're very close. That one I'd have to measure. I don't know what it is, but let's see. We've got 2, 3, 4, 12, that's 48, 50, 52, and 6-inch, 64 wide. And it's going to be, there's 36, 42, no, 36, 40, 44, 48, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 48 and 14, 52, 62, and 12, so it's about 70, it's about 74, 75 inches long. And if you guys want to know like specific bed sizes, I can bring a handout one night that tells you, you know, what's a double bed, what's a queen bed.
All these catalogs that sell sheets list those too.
Yeah.
That's where I go to find out.
But, you know, I can bring you sizes of actual bed sizes so you know if a quilt would fit or you can make it to fit. And all it is, it's playing with numbers. You know, make more blocks, make the blocks bigger, make the blocks smaller. I mean, you know, just like I made 9-inch blocks here, 12-inch blocks there. It's kind of a little drafting game. Okay, I see Patricia up looking at the back of the quilt.
I'm here.
So maybe it's time for us to look at the back of the quilt. All right.
It's also neatly pressed.
Pressing. Pressing. It makes it go together so much better. And the same thing with that one. It's all, you know, I press to make those, to make the bulk decrease at the seams. And so the ways that I tell you to press it, as we're talking here in class, that's what it's going to be, to make less bulk at the seams and to make everything lay together nice and flat. Okay, any questions? No? Do we want to talk about some outings, or do we want to talk at all about fabric buying? I'm actually, if anybody's interested in doing something either one evening or on Sunday afternoon. Also, one of the other things I wanted to talk about with you guys is, I'm doing demonstrations and kind of letting you work on things at home, but I'm wondering if once or twice throughout the whole series we want to have an evening where we stay a little longer, bring our machines and work, especially if we have something that's giving us a problem. So I want to give you guys some of those options with this, because I'm more than willing to do all that kind of thing with you.
Are you hoping that we'll have our blocks done by next week, the first block?
Yes.
We just have to have one of them?
Just the 9
Or just
a little nine
one
patch.
of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one little 9 patch
Not
would be
10
nice.
or 12 of them, just one, right?
One.
I can.
One. In fact, I think we should have a little show and tell when we begin our quilting portion each week and see what everybody's done. So yes, one little 9 patch. You think you can pull that off?
I think maybe this is possible.
Okay.
I've got, yeah.
Christy, do you have any availability to a sewing machine?
I'm not sure. I'll have to go see.
Okay. Because if not, talk to us. Okay?
I have a spare.
We have spares. Okay.
Oh, gee, do we ever?
I mean, I'm sure between all of this group, some have done a fair amount of quilting, some have done no quilting but have done tons of sewing. Between this group, you'll find whatever you need, I'm sure. Okay? And I know at my house there's way more than anybody needs. So, anything else you guys want to talk about tonight?